Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Online Marketing Simplified. I'm your host, Brad Parnell. So excited that you're here with me today. I've got a special guest with me. I've got Chris Cummington from Life Forged Coaching, who is not only an amazing human being, he's my coach too and has been phenomenal. So I'm excited to share him with you, and we can learn a little bit more about him, how he approaches stress and anxiety, and I hope you guys can take away some amazing tips. I think he's going to enlighten you guys on how you think about stress and anxiety and just maybe think a little bit different about how you approach every day. So Chris, welcome to the show.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Awesome. Well, hey, tell everyone a little bit about who you are.
Well, yeah, so Chris Cummington, and I have been blessed over the course of the past about 15 years to work in the mental health field and as a licensed professional counselor, and just as kind of a natural evolution of some of the things that I've gone through in life, had the opportunity to jump more into some life coaching and health coaching, and just really love working with people to try and figure out how they can get healthier and optimize and live the best life that they can live. And so it's a mission that I've been on at this point to try and help other people to find that forged life and allow them to live the best life they possibly can.
That's awesome. So tell everyone a little backstory. So you kind of right now, I mean, you're on a farm, you lift hay, you've got you do a bunch of really neat things that aren't typical for kind of the suburban Bible Belt American living families.
True statement. Yeah, so my family and I have chosen to live a little bit of a different life altogether in a lot of ways. We do have it's just a little 5-acre homestead where we raise horses and goats and have chickens and all that fun stuff. We milk the goats. My two boys have been raised on goat's milk, and we have fresh chicken eggs. And so really trying to focus on living a natural and healthy life as best we can, as much as we have in our control. And so we get outdoors a whole lot. We do lift a lot of heavy things. And so I was actually just outside putting hay out for the horses. And so hopefully I don't have any on my face, but I think we're good. So, but
I don't see any. I think you're clear. That's so cool. So you know what's interesting is most people, whenever they do a lot of hard work or they do a lot of outside activities, it's almost like outside of their normal day-to-day habits and routines, or it's a specific exercise routine they do. They show up, they do this work, then they go back to their normal life. But it sounds like you've kind of found an integration to where that is just a part of your, like, the daily chores, the responsibilities. It's hard things, it's outside, and it's in nature.
And to a large degree, yes, absolutely. We've tried to go ahead and make sure that life just kind of flows that way. But even in the process, I've had to be really intentional about my health. Lifting a bunch of hay bales and working with 1,200-pound horses. And I mean, I've had just about 8 years ago, I went through a pretty intense experience where I actually came off a horse and landed on my back and had a bulging disc and found out in the process I had 2 degenerative discs in the process as well, and was hunched over a cane for quite a period of time, and had to really rethink how we were doing life. I thought just being out on the ranch and just working hard was enough to go ahead and keep me nice and healthy, and I had to be a little bit more intentional about how I was taking care of myself. And so we started to make some changes. We started to look at how we were moving and the exercise we thought we were doing, and being a little bit more intentional with some of that to help strengthen our bodies. And then we also took a hard look at what we were feeding ourselves. And so we had fallen into habits of grabbing some fast food from time to time, and just grabbing whatever was easy and eating on the go, and in between taking kids different places and going to church and just trying to go ahead and fit everything in the schedule. Had fallen into some of those routines that weren't necessarily the healthiest for us, and my body was yelling at me in the process. And so we had to take another look and figure out how we could make some changes that really impacted my health and the health of my family.
So I think I know the answer to this next question, but I'm curious to see if I got it right. Just from our conversations, what was the hardest thing to eliminate from your life from a health perspective?
So, in my from the health side of my experience, I've done a lot of work with addictions, and I had to get real honest with myself and recognize I had an addiction. Thankfully, mine was legal, but it was not healthy, and it happened to be primarily. I will categorize it as two. One was sugar, and sugar was significantly impacting my health and my body in a negative way. And coffee was pretty high up there. That's been something that I have changed my relationship with coffee over the years. But sugar, I've had to pretty much processed sugar primarily. I've had to pretty much eliminate out of my life because it was just a very unhealthy relationship, and I had to choose to do life a little differently and get rid of that addiction.
Wow. Yeah. So tell everyone, and I'm curious too, what does refined sugar do to your body if you continue to feed it sugar every day? What does that do? What are the true short-term and long-term effects if you continue to feed your body refined sugar?
I mean, the key component that we find with refined sugar and processed foods as a whole, what we tend to refer to as ultra processed foods, is more than anything, inflammation. And there's a lot of talk about inflammation in the body, and where that comes from. And sugar, it was literally just, particularly again in my experience with my back, it was just lighting me up. And of course, it tasted so. I will tell you, sour gummy worms were my gosh. They spoke to my heart.
Oh yeah.
And so and we happen to live not too far from Buc-ee's, which if you've ever been in Buc-ee's, they have a wall of sugar. So it was my weak spot. And the more I ingested sugar, the more my body just got lit up, and my back particularly is where I felt the majority of it. But it creates a lot of inflammation in our body. It also creates some inflammation in our brain, and so it can really make it more difficult for us to recover from injuries. It can make it really difficult for us to just sometimes get up in the morning. I used to just barely be able to roll out of bed, and I spend the first 15 to 20 minutes just trying to stand up straight because I'm still recovering from getting a decent night's sleep. But then I also found as I got off of sugar that I wasn't even aware of this. I won't say I wasn't aware of it. I knew it, but I didn't really buy into it initially, was the impact it was having on my brain and
Mm.
the brain fog and just just the bouncing around from, call it ADHD, call it whatever you want, but my inability to just focus. And the further I've gotten away from sugar, the longer I've had sugar, processed sugars out of my diet, the more I've been able to focus, the more I've been able to go ahead and be productive with my time, and the less pain that I've experienced. And so it was a significant change in my health, both mentally and physically, as I started to make those changes.
That's incredible. I know it's inspired me as we were having a coaching call today to really take a look at that. As I've eliminated it in the past, it's slowly sneaking back in. But I know you've inspired me to try to really take that challenge and eliminate the refined sugars and processed foods, and maybe even Celsius. I haven't completely eliminated that, but I
We're
feel like
working
you're
on it.
slowly chipping away at that as one of my goals. You're impacting my subconscious mind uh, to want to not have that. So I haven't had one today.
Look at you. But you did have a coffee. I did see that.
I did, yeah, but there's no sugar in it.
Excellent. Excellent.
Okay, so let's transition and talk a little bit about stress. So, Mr. Chris, tell everyone, how has stress created a positive change in your life?
So, I always get entertained when we start talking about stress, just from the standpoint of, I almost feel like this has become, particularly coming from my background, I would see clients all the time talking about how stress is impacting them and how they just can't deal with this, or they have so much stress that they just can't, they can't accomplish the things that they want to accomplish in life, or they're, feeling that anxiety. And it just tended to be a key component in all the conversations I was having with clients. And then, of course, with COVID, coming along that tended to, I guess, exacerbate that, or at least put a magnifying glass over it and made it something that was very apparent and much more challenging for many people. And so, uh, you know, as I've continued to look at that, stress has kind of been villainized, and it's something that we try and avoid or eliminate. And there are, stressors, and so this is where we throw the baby out with the bathwater when we just talk about stress. But I want to really bring it back to stressors, and there are so many stressors that we are going to encounter every day. Some of which are in our control, and some of which are out of our control. And so when we start to look at those stressors that we run into, I really want to go ahead and look at, okay, what do I have control over here, and what is something that I don't have any control over? And then I want to look at, is it something toxic? If it's something toxic and it's within my control, I probably need to eliminate it. I need to get it out of my life. Or is it something that, might be a little bit more uncomfortable, but it might have an opportunity for me to learn something, for me to grow? And so my personal approach started to change as I went through some of the stressors with my body. There's been some experiences that I could, dive into where even just starting my first business that created some serious stressors, moving from a traditional, job setting into trying to start my own business. And those stressors were going to be there. I did have some control over them, and I could run away from them, but then I wasn't going to grow. Or I could go ahead and I could lean into them, and I could reframe how I approached those and change my attitude, decide how much effort I was going to put in there, and I could make this a growth opportunity. And so I love looking at those stressors and saying, okay, how am I going to approach this? What am I going to do differently? And how am I going to go ahead and frame this so that it's, what is God teaching me? Or how can I go ahead and learn from this and change and do better next time? Or, what are the opportunities here that maybe I hadn't seen previously, and it was a blind spot that I need to check in on? And so that was really a big piece for when I stepped into that entrepreneurial role and out of the traditional job setting. Was, if I'm going to grow, I have to lean into this. If I'm going to grow professionally, if I'm going to grow personally, I have to lean into some of that stress. But I also got to recognize there's some stress that I need to eliminate. And so recognizing the difference, I identify all the time, if I want to go ahead and get my body to be stronger, I go to the gym and I stress my body so that I can go ahead and build muscle. And so that's a positive stressor. Now, of course, if I go too far with that, if I go ahead and, don't do it with proper form or whatever, I can go ahead and I can have that be an unhealthy stressor. But recognizing that there are healthy stressors and we don't need to run away from all of them, I think has been something that we've almost done a complete 180 on. And we're, everything that's a little uncomfortable in a world where, we have Google at our fingertips where we don't have to even think anymore. We can just Google it. Or we have, a remote to everything, or a smart TV, or heck, homes are smart these days. All these smart devices that, can make it more convenient. Heck, fast food into Uber Eats. You don't even have to get off the couch. You can just go ahead and call and they'll deliver it to your front door. And so, in a world that is hyper convenient, trying to lean into some of those stressors so that we can strengthen ourselves, particularly for some of those stressors that are completely out of our control, some of which may be toxic and we might not have any control over it, but we can control how we respond to it. And so that's where I like to go ahead and focus a lot of my attention in changing that mindset of how are we going to approach this so that we grow ourselves in preparation for those stressors and reframe how we can engage with them.
I love that. So that is a great transition to the next question, which is, how can mindset influence stress and anxiety?
So, mindset is a big piece of it. That's kind of where we often start with these conversations. And so I really like Carol Dweck's, simple framework for a fixed versus a growth mindset. And so fixed very much being that idea that, well, I just can't because, or, this is just the way it is, or, I just don't have that skill, so I'm not even going to try. Whereas the growth mindset really leans into, you know, where can I learn from this? Okay, failing forward, failure is not a bad thing. It's an opportunity for me to go ahead and learn something new or to grow in this area. And so looking at every challenge as a place where I can grow in some form or fashion. Maybe it's something I learned never to do again in that process. But mindset is just a key component in getting our brain healthy, our mind healthy, so that we can engage in whatever that challenge is. It's paramount. And so, one of the biggest challenges that I had trying to get into the right mindset a lot of times was, even in the counseling realm, would always hear about meditation, and I don't know. I mean, if I'm being completely honest, I had in my mind that this was some monk thing, and, it just, I couldn't wrap my brain around it initially. And I kind of got, dragged into it kicking and screaming, trying to figure out what meditation is all about. And so the more I explored it, it's become something that's become a part of my daily habit. Um, and I recognize that there's a lot of different ways that meditation can look. And so what meditation might look like for me and what it looks like for you may look a little bit different, but it's an opportunity for us to slow down, to reconnect with our thoughts, to just reconnect with our body, and to just take a moment and find a way to create some balance where we live in a very imbalanced world. And so it may be as simple as, sitting down and just having some silence. It might be getting a book that helps to, grow your mind, and maybe you spend a little time reading in the morning or in the evening. It might be prayer time. For me, it's turned out to be actually some breath work, which I found to be really powerful. And so I've really enjoyed that piece, and often kind of making that a just a time for me to slow everything down and reconnect with my body and my mind, and allow myself to reset for the day. And so meditation has been a key way for me to get to that place where, recognizing that there might be some stressful things, and I can control my breath, and I can go ahead and bring myself down to a place of calm, has been pretty powerful in that mindset process.
That's cool. Is it fair to say by default we are wired to run away from stress and not lean into it to find the teachings of what we're supposed to be learning?
Yeah, that's that basic fight or flight, right? It, it's built into us because, if a lion creeps up on me, I shouldn't stand there and be like, oh, let me go ahead and calm my breath. I need to jet. I need to get out of there, or I need to go ahead and prepare if I'm backed into a corner to fight for my life. And so, it is absolutely a significant uh, component to help for survival purposes. The beautiful part is that we're not stuck in those situations as often anymore where we have to fight for our lives. And so, taking the opportunity to be a little bit more intentional with, if I'm in a dark alley, yeah, I'm hoping my fight or flight is intact. If somebody, comes up and I sense that they've got a knife in their hand or something like that, I want to go ahead and still be on guard. So that's not a bad thing. In fact, uh, anxiety to a degree is it's a great superpower in a lot of ways to allow us to say, boom, all right, I need to be keyed in. I need to go ahead and be aware. I need to be prepared to get out of here or fight or whatever I need to do at that moment. But it's when that anxiety is constant, and when that anxiety is just reoccurring all the time, and sometimes with little you know little stimulant to actually go ahead and create that, then we need to look at, our responses to these stressors, and are they
Yeah.
are they in balance with what we're running into, and do we have an opportunity to grow to meet greater stressors, because at some point we're going to run into them.
That's a great transition into the next question, which is, what is the body's relationship to stress? What happens when we are accepting that stress, when we lean into it and try to fight it versus just try to live through it? What does it actually do to our body?
I think this is where recognizing so often the breath work piece that I was kind of discussing earlier that also plays into this is, we often will hyperventilate when we feel, anxious and stressed. And so allowing ourselves to go ahead and manage that breath and slow that down, we can actually, lead our mind through actions of our body. And so it's a beautiful process when we reconnect that mind and body. But then we also got to recognize that so often we are improperly fueling our body for our mind to operate at its best. And so when we get into processed foods and sugars and all that, there's so many things that we just need to recognize that are lighting up our brain and not allowing us to operate at the highest degree. I mean, when I was on sugar, I definitely was shorter with my kids as far as my, just, something that shouldn't have been that big of a deal would frustrate me a lot more. And so, that patience was not there. There's just the inability to focus on task was not there. So how we take care of our body impacts our ability to go ahead and really key in on how we respond to stressful situations. On top of that, things like, just basic hydration. A lot of the literature right now is suggesting that as much as 75% of Americans are chronically dehydrated. That's a lot of people who are, and we have access to sodas like crazy. And that's, I drink my share of coffee. I keep it under control these days, but it has a little bit of water in it. But, just being aware of, are we getting enough water in our bodies? Our bodies are, there's a ton of water making up our bodies, our hearts, our brain, our lungs, even our bones are like 30, I think 31, 32% water. And so we need to be replenishing that. We need to be taking care of our bodies in that way. Something as simple as exercise. I think the CDC says that only about 24% of Americans are actually getting the minimum suggested guidelines for physical activity. 24%.
Wow.
We got to get out and we got to get moving. Our body needs that just to go ahead and feel at its best, and to go ahead and keep our brain engaged, and to just build basic muscle that we need to operate every day, to not let ourselves get to a point where something as simple as a fall can go ahead and really impact our ability to go play football with my kids. That's where, one of the things that really came down to me, we got invited to, at my kid's school, a father-son football game. And I went and I could barely walk afterwards. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have got to go ahead and be intentional with how I impact my body. And am I up for just being able to keep up with my kids? I want to still be able to go ahead and play basketball with them, or get outdoors and get active. And so, and the other piece of that puzzle is the Environmental Protection Agency. They actually put out some numbers where they suggest about 93% of a person's life is spent indoors. 93%.
Wow, 93%.
Between work, between being in the house, between being in the car, technology is keeping us more and more indoors. No wonder most of us don't have enough vitamin D that affects our immune system, that affects our, focus, that affects our, that it has such an impact everywhere. And these are some of those key things that we're actually choosing, stressors that are unhealthy for us, and we have some control there. And so when we start to take care of those and recognize where we have impact, we can go ahead and start to switch that narrative and make room for growth through those stressors, instead of spending our time with stressors that really are toxic and need eliminated.
So what you're saying, Chris, is we need to drink more water, eat less sugar, and move around a little bit more.
That would be a great diagnosis for most people, I would imagine. I know it was for me. So,
Yeah, I mean that seems like obviously I'm kidding, but also kind of serious. I think if there's just something that you can start that's easy and super practical, I think that would probably be a great just thing to try to practice in your everyday life. Hey, can I drink a little more water, eat a little bit less sugar, and move around? And as a bonus, maybe move around outside. It sounds like.
absolutely. I mean, literally just getting up and spending 5 minutes in that early sunshine right off the bat when you get up in the morning, when that sunshine's
Mm,
coming up, it helps to set your circadian rhythm. I mean, it's so simple that there are some simple things that are basically nature's medicine for us to go ahead and stay healthy that don't cost or cost very little. And we have easy access to most of it, but we just have to be intentional about our choices.
yeah, yeah, that's powerful. Okay, next question here. How can we make a powerful impact on stress in our families and in our communities?
So this one is one that I have really gotten excited about recently as just trying to be more intentional about gratitude. I actually shared this quote that it hit me yesterday. I was reading uh, what's his name? Blanking on his name right now. Uh, Andrew Carnegie is actually the one who made the statement that,
Napoleon Hill.
Napoleon Hill. Napoleon Hill it's a book where he's interviewing Andrew Carnegie, and Andrew Carnegie makes the statement that uh, instead of praying for uh, instead of praying for more blessings, I want you to pray for more wisdom to appreciate the blessings that you already have. And that was just a really powerful concept for me to go ahead and think through and recognize that, there's just so many things that are blessings in our lives, that when we take the time to step back and start to count those. And I mean, in that vein, I mean, you know, I appreciate Brad. I appreciate you, and you've been pushing me in ways. You talk about me as a coach, and you've been pushing me in ways as well. And so I got the opportunity to work with a leader several years ago, and he always said that if you in every job that you have where you interact with somebody else, you have the opportunity to go ahead and learn something. And if you don't learn something from that interaction, you're missing half of your compensation. I was like,
Oh, wow.
that's powerful. So every time I engage with somebody, I have an opportunity to learn as well. And so the beauty of community is that we can be really intentional about learning and growing together. And so, thinking about who it is that we spend the most time with, who are those 5 people that we go ahead and engage with the most that are really shaping our lives. And then, how are we shaping those around us? Who are we serving? Who are we being intentional about engaging with? How are we creating a community of, healthy interactions together with stressful situations, with stress? I mean, how do we handle conflict with one another in a healthy way? And then, I'm very intentional these days about making sure that when I deal with conflict, I want to demonstrate for my children a healthy way to deal with conflict so that that's being modeled for them, and they have the opportunity to go ahead and learn that, and then to engage in that in a healthy way as they get older. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
You,
just so many opportunities there.
yeah, I love that. And if you don't mind jumping in, so one quote too, as we're talking about Napoleon Hill, I'll share. And
Yeah,
it's funny, this is actually on our Genie Rocket software. This is on the login page. I liked it so much we put it on the login page so people get to read it before they log in. And it's the quote from Napoleon Hill, and it says, "Deliberately seek the company of people who influence you to think and act on building the life you desire."
dude, that's powerful. That is such a key component when we create community. The beautiful part about that, I mean, and again, I go back to it's kind of my evolution. Even in counseling, we talked about the mind a lot, but eventually we got into what was really cornerstone for so many people was healthy relationships and community. Because when you have a healthy community, and you're surrounded by healthy people that are, really building you up or challenging you or pushing you in different ways, but uh, then all these stressors that we're so focused on become so much easier to shoulder because we're not shouldering them by ourselves. And so when I have people around me, when I surround myself with people who know things I don't know, that have gifts that I don't have, that challenge me in ways that I never thought I would be challenged, there's unlimited opportunity for growth. And so, I mean, hopefully they grow by their experience with me as well. And I believe that is a part of the process. And so, just being open to intentional community, and
Mm,
that's where I think, coming back to things like, but that's where we recognize that when we were hitting up fast food on the way home or things like that, that was a very different experience than when we got home and we intentionally made time for family dinner. That was
mm,
community
yeah,
around food. I wasn't having the conversations with my kids that I needed to have when I'm just grabbing fast food on the way home.
yeah.
Those are some really, informative times that I want to make sure that I don't miss out on as they're growing up. Just being able
So
to go out with friends and have a dinner and connect with them and be able to have some really deep conversations
yeah.
um,
So
can
what
be done
advice
around.
what
Go ahead.
advice would you give Chris if there's someone listening to this that might not have those people around them that are sharpening them and encouraging them and helping them be the kind of person they want to become? As we like to say, I think one of our favorite verses and just mantras is that the iron sharpens iron because that's so powerful. And what we'll get into in a little bit too is just kind of like where the name Life Forged Coaching came from, because I think there's some really neat backstory to that. But what would you recommend for someone that they might be stuck in an office environment and just around people that's um, they might say is out of their control? Like, this is just where I'm at every day, and they want to start being around those kind of people. What are some steps they could take maybe to find those people or start to be intentional about the community that they're around?
I mean, of course, I'm a Christian, and so I will say, church is a great place to start. If you're not connected with a church family, that's a great place to go ahead and start to build some of those connections. That's a powerful place where you can have some common interests, some common goals, and some common purpose. Um, but outside of that, find places to volunteer and serve. That's one of the beautiful things about community is you can find ways to. There's so many different programs out there that need volunteers, and when you connect with other people who have a heart to serve, those are some powerful connections.
Mm,
And you may learn, you may meet some people that you might would have never met just on a, just on your daily experience. But um, you know, God tends to put people in our path that will help to build us to the person that He's designed us to be. And so, when we're intentional about putting ourselves in positions and not, the biggest obstacle in most of our ways is spending too much time in front of TV, computer, technology. You're not going to meet people that way. I mean, maybe you meet somebody weirdly if you go to a theater and you're watching a movie, but even then, you're probably not connecting. Get outside. Go make some connections somewhere. Get out. If you go to dinner with somebody, you meet some. Put your cell phone away. Try and actually make that connection. We've got to get back to face-to-face connections. I find this, and you, Brad, you and I have had plenty of conversations face-to-face, but so I understand the irony as we're doing this through technology as I say this, but
yeah,
as much as we can get away from technology and connect and shake hands or fist bump, whatever you want to do, but we've got to get back in proximity so that we can make those connections.
I love it.
Service locations are a great place to start. Church is a great place.
I love it. That's such a great answer. And just to back that up, you know, I will say it's probably a couple months ago, and I volunteered to pick up trash at Grapevine Lake. That was
Oh,
like 2 hours. It was in the morning. It was by myself, and it was a last minute thing. But I met people there, and one of them turned into a business deal in a day
nice.
just because I was there, and like-minded people do those things. So when you're there serving, to your point, Chris, you meet some great people that also have that heart of servanthood. And
Yeah.
typically those are the people you want to be around. So I just wanted to back that up to say I was picking up trash at Grapevine Lake early in the morning with not many people there, but the people that were there, we had a great connection with. And
Well, and
so
on top of that, you never know who's watching you either. So what kind of an example are you setting when you're doing things like that? And people, I mean, somebody is always watching us. And so
that's
when
right.
we have an opportunity to model healthy interactions with for other people, I think that's a great way that we can create an impact as well.
You mentioned the term, I don't know if you did this intentionally, but the obstacle is the way. Do you know who wrote the book called The Obstacle is the Way? Or have
I
you
do
heard of
not.
it? So there is it's funny because we were talking about stoicism and I had someone on the show, last show we talked about stoicism. So he is an author and is leading kind of this charge called the Daily Stoic. And he wrote a book called The Obstacle is the Way. And his name is Ryan Holiday.
Very cool.
And so he's a great guy to look up to. I just started kind of rereading some of this stuff, but one of his most popular books is a Stoic book called The Obstacle is the Way, which is a really neat, just overall mindset and a way of life it's kind of like the idea of the bison, right? The bison is the only animal that goes into the storm as opposed to
Yep.
runs away from the storm.
Absolutely.
And you probably know this better than me being a farm boy, but but the reason you go into the storm or into the obstacle is because that's the shortest path to the other side, and you get through the pain faster to learn
Yep.
from the experience and get that result, as opposed to running away because it's inevitably coming for you. The storm is going to hit. It's the
Beautiful metaphor for life.
yeah. It's you either just go through it, just turn around and face it, and just bust through it and be stronger on the other side, or you run away from it. And it's eventually going to mow you down, and you're going to end up with that life lesson later. It's the I have this quote on my phone sometimes. You know how the phone has like focus mode and drive mode, so my background changes all the time, and I don't know when they show up. But I've got one quote, and it's I'm sure you're very familiar with it, but I love it, and it's simple. But it's the pain of discipline versus the pain of regret.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it's like, are we going to go through the pain right now and do things the hard way, or are we going to do the easy, comfortable things and end up going through the pain later? And how much worse is that pain going to be?
Yeah. How much does it stack up at that point? How many things did we, just put on the back burner until it becomes so overwhelming? And so, that's where often, the things that are in our control, we, if we keep pushing them back and pushing them back, we create a more stressful situation than necessary. When if we just, go through the storm, it would make such a huge difference in our ability to undertake that.
Such a huge difference. So back to you. So I am super curious. We'll do next question here. Intro sound effect. Here we go. I'm just playing around with this now. So the name Life Forged Coaching, where did that come from?
Oh man. So, it's been kind of entertaining over the course of the past couple of years. We we got introduced to Forged in Fire, which I'm sure many of you have probably seen the TV series where they're forging knives. And my boys and I and my wife were watching it, but my boys got super excited about it. And I've always, kind of I have a full knife collection. It's been something I've had since it started very young, and so I have a huge knife collection. I've always had a passion for knives, and particularly my youngest son has picked up the same passion and collection. And we decided after watching several of these that we wanted to try our hand at forging. And there's a lot more to forging metal than I would have anticipated. Even watching Forged in Fire, they definitely cinematize it in a lot of ways. And so as we dove into it, as many things that I do, I dove in as deeply as I could to try and understand the process of forging steel and forging knives. And so we got an anvil, we got a forge, we got all the hammers, we got the grinders and the sanders, and went to work and started forging some metal. I will say our first couple were very rough, to say the least, and we're slowly improving in the process and learning as we go. But what I loved about it as I was really just learning more about the process is it's really awesome picture when you look at, you take a raw piece of metal, something that has all kinds of potential, and then you take it and you place it into the fire, you heat it up, and you heat it up to the point that it actually starts to change the molecular structure so that it softens, so that then you can take it and you can hammer that thing out, and you can, and that process goes back and forth into the heat and out under the hammer, and into the heat and out under the hammer, and you're stressing that metal and shaping it into the tool that you're desiring. And then you get to take it and you get to refine it, and you take it to the sander and you take it to the grinder, and you go ahead and you start putting more shape into it and edge to it, and then you have to quench it and harden it. And I looked at that process and I'm like, that seems pretty spot on for how I feel God is shaping and forming us, and allowing us to weather those storms so that we can be stronger on the other side, so that when we come out on the other side, we will be better equipped to serve the purpose that he designed us for. And so
That's powerful.
as I continued down that road, Life Forged coaching was really just, it was a no-brainer.
Man, that's so powerful. I've got to share a funny story too. And this will be a plug for F3 as we talk about community. So there's this completely free workout group for men. That's awesome. So I recommend that you guys check out. It's called F3, stands for Fitness, Fellowship, and Faith. But what's cool is it gets you outdoors, gets you doing hard things, and it gets you in a community, which is a lot about what we're talking about here. So Chris came with me to the group early one morning, and everyone gets funny nicknames. Because what's great about a community if everyone just calls each other boring names? Like, it's boring if it's like, hey, Brad, hey, Chris. What's better if it's like, hey, Jasmine, hey, Butterknife, right? So Chris got the...
You're Jasmine.
That's right, yes. I got the name... So it's funny, I got the name Jasmine because I was trying to get a super tough name. Kind of like you, maybe not intentionally, but I was like, hey, I do, Spartan races. I drive a Jeep. I did 75 hard. I like to do these kind of hard, tough outdoor things. I own a company called Genie Rocket, and they happened to pause on that one out of all the cool things they could have given me. And they said, wait, Genie Rocket, like Genie, like Aladdin? I was like, yes. And they're like, what was his monkey's name? And it was Abu. And then someone threw out Jasmine. And I might have said, please not Jasmine, which immediately solidified my name as Jasmine. But Chris
would have been entertaining as well.
Abu would have been great. I probably would. I would have embraced that. But you just got to embrace what you get.
Yep, absolutely. So I got Butterknife in the process, and so and I had some arms that were about to fall off after doing several rounds of curls with a cinder block that day. So man, it definitely I was impressed and maybe a little bit sore the next day. But that's great community. Absolutely, I love it.
And Chris's love for knives, they couldn't give him a cool name, like Swiss Army or anything like.
I tried.
Yeah, so he got Butterknife. So if you guys are ever in the Alliance, Dallas-Fort Worth area, and you come to an F3, you can go to f3nation.com. Maybe you'll see Jasmine or Butterknife out there. You can come do some workouts with us.
Love it.
So cool. So Chris, we're running a little bit short on time, but tell everybody first, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your knowledge with us.
Thanks for having me.
It was awesome. And I would recommend, guys, too, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, one, maybe you can get you've got some good insights from this, but maybe there's someone else in your life that needs to hear this. We're doing this as a gift. We're sharing our knowledge and our ideas and thoughts, and Chris is doing this for free to help other people. So you can give other people that same gift by sharing this. So if there's someone that's struggling with mindset or anxiety or stress, which let's be honest, like all of us are at some level. Sometimes it's the very small things, like a lot of the things that Chris said here. It says very small things or the small hinges that can swing those really big doors. Imagine if someone listened to this and they started drinking more water. They started taking less sugar. They started getting outside, doing hard things. They start making a habit change that ends up being a life change. That's a huge gift that you can bless somebody else with. And Chris, thanks for blessing us with that today, man. We really appreciate you.
Absolutely.
So if people want to get more like Life Forge coaching, how can they learn more about you, what you're doing, how they can continue to follow you in your progress?
Yeah, so we have the website is www.lifeforgedcoaching.com. So feel free to jump on there, and we also have a Facebook page that we're is just Lifeforged Coaching. So you can look us up on there as well.
Guys, look up Chris, follow him. He is an amazing human being. I am so blessed and lucky to be able to have him as my coach. And you guys just follow him, get some advice from him. It's so important to have a great coach in your life and just to have this these positive words and ideas every day, honestly, flowing through you. So thank you again, Chris. If you guys like this episode, again, share it, and then please rate and review this podcast and share it with people so we can continue to grow it. And we'll catch you guys next time.